Okay, this is a connected components workbench video. I'm going to show you some of the parameters and kind of try to describe what the options are for each one. So I have a drive on my local area network. I'm going to try to discover that drive. And I'm going to click on the shop network. I'm going to click on that little plus sign in front of it there. It's a little slow to react here. Just have to wait for it. Okay, so I have a very small network. I have a PLC and a Powerflex drive. So I'm going to click on the Powerflex and say OK. And it's going to upload some parameters from the drive. It'll tell me it's a Powerflex 525, single phase 110, half horse, firmware 6.001. If I click on device definition, it'll tell me the same information. Tell me a little bit about peripherals. I don't have any, so basically that's all. The firmware version is important. Since I read this from the drive, this is correct. If I was to create a new project with a generic 525 drive, I would need to match the firmware to what the actual physical drive has in it, or I'll get an error message on that. So let me do that one more time. I didn't actually do anything with that. Let's click on the Powerflex, say OK. I'm going to add that to my project. It will save the data. I'll go to parameters, and here they are. This long list. You know, what I'm going to do is reset this to the defaults. And when I did that, the drive faulted because I reset it. So I'm going to hit the red button to reset it. Okay. And I'm still online with it. So I'm going to verify that by, let's see, let me push the start push button. Okay, it says 0 hertz. I'm going to turn the drive pot up a little bit. And I am, in fact, online with the drive. I know that because it's got a green bar right here. And I have a green square around the drive. So when I go back to defaults, what that does, let me scroll down and show you. The default starting source is the keypad. That's the little green button. And the drive pot is the default speed reference. Okay, so I'm going to dial this back down to 0. Scroll up so you can see it. There it is, winding down, and it's at 0. Okay. Let me ramp it up a little bit. Okay, I'm just looking at some things here. Okay, so default, it will run off the keypad, right? So let's look at the nameplate motor data. So like, what if I have a 208 motor? Well, I can't change any of this while it's running. So let me press stop. Okay, now I can change it. Did you see how it changed right there? So maybe I have a 208 motor, 60 hertz. Maybe it's I'm going to leave these alone right here. 2.5 amp. I'm just going to leave this alone. Maybe it's a 4-pole, 1750 RPM. Here I can change my acceleration time. So let's make it really slow, like 60 seconds. I'm going to press start again, and I'm going to run it up to 60, and you can see how slow it is now. Much slower. If I have a heavy load, like a conveyor belt or a rock crusher or something like that, maybe I want to start it out slow. You know, I don't want to break anything. If I have a fan, I don't have to start it this slow, but you get the idea. If you need a slow start, you just plug in a number here. Let's see if I can change it on the fly. 15. I don't think it's going to take that change until I hit stop and then start again. So I'm going to stop it and let it wind down to 0 and press start. And there it goes. Okay, so I'm just going to let that run. You can see that it's estimating the RPMs based on the nameplate data. So it's trying to figure out what's going on. If I slow down the drive, you can see this output speed changes as well. What else is going on? Drive temperature, 22, firmware version, lots of information, right? Let me stop it. And notice that the start source 2 is the terminal block, right? So on those diagrams where you had a 2-wire start or a 3-wire start push button circuit, that's where you're going to wire that into, right? So how do I use that? Since the start source 1 is the default, how do I use start source 2? That's a good question. What I will do is scroll down here, and input number 7, the default is to use start source number 2. So if I wire a toggle switch into input number 7 and turn it on, it will use start source number 2, which would be the external connections, right? So it's just that simple. So how would you know that, though? Well, that's a good question. Let's click on that and see what my options are. I have a lot of options. So if I want to use the start source 2, but not the speed reference 2, I could do that, and then it would start from the external push button, but it would still use speed reference 1 as my speed reference. So it's interesting. I mean, you can mix it all up. You can mess it all up too if you're not careful. So if you plan to switch over to start to speed reference 2, then just use that default option and you'll be fine. It is possible to use the same speed reference for all of these settings, like 0 to 10, 0 to 10. But, you know, the obvious question is, well, how do I know what to do? And the answer is you need to plan it out ahead of time. So on paper, you'll draw out a wiring diagram to show how the controls are going to be wired. Then you'll get a copy of the default settings and go through there and mark it up. Okay, with a red pen, you'll just scratch out whatever changes you need to make. You'll do it on paper first. That way you have something to look at when you sit down in front of it. Okay, I did clear it out to the default settings earlier, so I'm going to scroll down and see if I've still got my IP address in there. I do not. That's all gone now. So let me illustrate how you would put this back to something that's usable. I would change this 128 to parameters. Then I would just type in an IP address that I would like to have in the drive. So I'm going to do a 192.168.1. I'm just going to make up a number, 99. My subnet mask needs to be 255, 255, 255.0. And it's important to note at this point that all of these changes are live. They're all going into the drive as I type them in. Okay, so there's nothing to download or upload. Over here I can do an upload. What that does is it reads the drive parameters from the drive. But I'm online, so I'm making changes on the fly here. The rest of this I would just leave alone. I don't want to change anything that I don't have to. I would point out one very important parameter, 544. Reverse disable. So if your process should not should never go in reverse. You want to disable reverse operation. Okay, that prevents things from going backwards. Might cause some damage if they go backwards. If it's okay for them to go forward and backwards, then just leave this alone, right? And there's just hundreds and hundreds of parameters. Let me look for one other one that comes to mind. No, it's not there. I'm thinking of a different drive. So the question is, how would you ever know where all these parameters are? They're in the user's manual. So, for example, let's pick one. Start source 1. Parameter 46, P46 in the user manual is the start source 1 option. And you've got, 5 different choices you can make there. It is better, though, to leave things set up as the defaults here and then use one of these switches like input 7. Maybe you want to go to start source 3. Okay, 3 would be the Ethernet. So if I do this, I have the option of going to the keypad to control it or the Ethernet connection. And the Ethernet will be most likely a PLC, so you'll have like an automatic control system to run the drive. Or if I turn off that switch on pin 7, I go back to the keypad, right? So I maintain some local controls, or I can throw the switch and go to remote control. Okay. So what if I want to go between 2 and 3 instead of 1 and 3? Well, I can make the default starting method equal to the start source 2, so I could move these 2 up, just reassign these, so that way it's either 1 or 3. That sounds good, actually. The alternative is to use up one of these and make it start source 2. So if I turn this one on, I have 2. Turn this one on, I have 3. So like a selector switch between the 2 of them. But that ties up an input, and I would probably rather not do that. Kind of wastes an input, So to me, a better thing to do would be to just reassign the starting method. So let me show you how that would work. Digital input terminal block there. I want to make this one keypad. This one can be 0 to 10. This one can be drive pot. So I've swapped them around. So now 1 is the default is the terminal block. If I throw this switch right here on 7, then I get the Ethernet. So some planning ahead would be the key to being successful in this. Think it through on paper. I like paper because you can scratch things out and erase things, and until you have a good plan, and then you come to the software and make your changes, and you're all set. So there's only a handful of changes that are really, really important, and that's going to be the motor data, which is the 31 area, the 41 area, which is how the motor operates, the speeds, right? The control methods, which is like 45 through 51, right in here. And then, of course, the terminal block methods down here. Okay, so there's little pockets of critical parameters here. You should never feel overwhelmed by this. The best way to do it is to get a printout. There's a print button right here. If you just print this, let me go back to defaults one more time. If I print this, print it as a PDF, I'm going to print it to my flash drive one more time. Another default list. So what I've got is a blank copy of the default parameters. So let me go through real quick here. And here it is. I can print this out on a printer, a real printer, and mark it up. Get a red pen and mark it up with the changes you want, right? So that's going to be the key to success with this piece of equipment. Planning up front. Since I've wiped everything out, now I get to do it all over again. The one thing I want to check, though, is I want to check my IP, because that's my default methods for communicating with the PLC. So, of course, I messed that up. Let's go back to parameters, 192.168. Can't do it all at once. 1.117. Okay, so that will at least get me up and running. It'll put me on the network so I can see it. I think that's enough for connected components. There are some wizards, and I kind of like the wizards, but at the same time they have some issues. Let me kind of run through the wizard real quick so you can see it. It's a kind of a really simplified way of, here you can reset the parameters. I don't want to do that again. Language, control methods, going to skip past that. Nameplate data, 208, etc. Just put your motor data in there. No feedback on this one. I don't have anything. Resistors, no resistors. Here, if I had a motor connected, I could actually jog the motor and make it spin. Okay. I don't really want to do that. I know it is possible to do it, but I don't have a motor connected. But you would jog it right here. So let me at least illustrate. What you'll do is you'll press the stop, press the start, and it's going to give you a message. It's going to say that you need to set the speed reference to 15, which is going to be the Ethernet, because I'm connected to the drive right now over Ethernet. So I'll say sure. Okay, the drive just started. Okay, so when I press, let me type in a number here, like 20 hertz. There it goes. So the drive is running now. It's at 20.00 hertz. Let's go up like 20.6. There it goes. Okay, so I can just tell it what I want it to do, and it'll spin the motor. Okay, if I go back to 0, I'm going to stop it here in a second. I can hold down jog, and I can jog the motor. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm checking the physical direction of the motor, if I had one. If I'm happy with that, I say yes, that's fine, and I go to next right here. If I had a motor connected, I would do a rotational tune. I would actually let it spin the motor to analyze the motor. I don't have that, so I'll skip that. I could set my min-max frequency here. So this is an alternative to the parameter listing. If you're uncomfortable with the parameter listing at first, you can use this technique here. You can disable reverse operation. And here's where we get into some challenging areas. The software likes to crash all the time when I make changes here. So I'm going to click on it, and hopefully it doesn't crash, but it did. It's almost predictable. Let me just kind of skip through these parameters. Okay, the little exclamation point says no two speed references can have the same value. That's not exactly true. You can do that, but through the parameter list. On the wizard, you can't do it. So for speed reference 1, if I change it, I'm going to I think I'll be okay. Let's just try it. Let's put it back to keypad. Okay, speed ref 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me put that as drive pot. Okay, speed ref 2, 0 to 10. That all looks good to me. Speed ref 3, Ethernet. That's good. Let's go forward. Parameters looks good. That all looks good. What's nice about this is it kind of shows you what you're going to be connecting to it. The only thing that could be better than this would be like little switches out here, but it literally shows you what you're planning on doing. So I do like the wizard because it brings it, closer to reality for you. You've got your start source here. I'm going to put that as keypad. These are default values now. all defaults right here. Okay, next. Your relays, you can configure the relays as well through the wizard. So I do like it. It's just that it crashes from time to time. So you just have to expect that. Direction test was not completed. I'm going to say finish. And I'm done with the wizard. So let's go to parameters for a second. Let's just scroll down and look at, there's my IP address. Let's see if I disabled the reverse operation correctly. Let me get down there. Well, it's enabled here. I thought I had disabled it. Never hurts to check, I guess. So anyway, there's the wizard. I like the parameter methods myself. The only thing I like about the wizard is you can auto-tune the motor, and it is nice to be able to do that. So I do like the wizard for that one thing. Okay, so there's the connected component workbench in a quick video. Don't be intimidated by the number of parameters. You only have to change a few to make it work correctly. The challenge is to interpret the project requirements and make it all work through the keypad or terminal block, whatever it is. So that's enough for this right here.